Anyway, moving on. Baldur's Gate 3 is big, huge, massive game. I want to talk about this. I don't think this is an RPG. I think this is a role-playing game simulator.
Yeah, it's kind of like, there's so many levels to Baldur's Gate 3 that it does kind of make other RPGs seem like they're role-playing as role-playing games comparatively.
Yeah.
Because Baldur's Gate is just massive. For those of you out there who don't know Baldur's Gate, it's based on D&D, so it's built straight out of D&D systems. So you've got your ability scores, which in most games are considered attributes when it comes to your strength, constitution, wisdom, intelligence.
Can you hear my eyes glazing over?
I can.
No.
And yeah, I'm gonna get super nerdy here.
So hold on. Midas, I want to hear your have you played D&D at all? Have you played tabletop stuff?
So no, I'm not a tabletop guy. I'm not a D&D guy, but I am a big RPG guy. And I didn't even know about Baldur's Gate. And then I've been hearing all these rumors about sleeping with a bear. That's all I'm hearing is people.
That's confirmed. You can do it.
Yeah, I'm hearing people are getting excited about sleeping with a bear. I didn't know everyone was a furry. Like
everybody
I wasn't. But yeah, no, It's really looks interesting to me. I love deep stories. I love deep mechanics. I love where you can really get your teeth into. I'm not really into the dice stuff because, like I said, I don't come from that tabletop
That's
world.
what I think is fascinating is like the video game role-playing games, pretty much as long as they've existed, especially on consoles, have streamlined stuff that D&D introduced. Like they've taken those mechanics and they basically they hide the dice.
They hide the dice. It's just like a percentage to hit. Anytime you've played any RPG, it's like 74% chance to hit. Yeah, that's just like a dice roll. It just means you need to roll better than a 17.
I mean, it sounds complicated when you explain it.
Yes.
Sometimes it is.
It is.
And like the whole, you can move a little bit, but not that much, but a little bit, and then you can do something. What does doing something mean? It means something, an action, maybe attacking, or maybe something else.
Maybe it's a bonus action.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah, maybe if you roll the right dice, you get to do some other stuff. But these are things that are like, anybody who's played a lot of D&D, it's like muscle memory. You get it. But like coming at this from the perspective of, playing a video game, even we're talking about this with our producer, but even coming from Divinity Original Sin, which is what Larian did before this, that was a CRPG first and foremost, whereas this is striving to like really capture the authentic D&D experience, which ironically there are still dice working behind the scenes, but they went to the trouble of making photorealistic dice that you roll on the screen. Doesn't need to have that, but it adds to it,
I love it. I love seeing the dice roll on the screen because like anytime you're trying to do something, you're trying to pickpocket somebody, you're trying to disarm a trap, you're trying to sneak by somebody or convince them in a conversation to give you all of their gold. Like, you have to roll a dice for that, and you can see all the different bonuses and how you've built your character out and how that affects it. If you're trying to convince somebody of something and you have a terrible charisma, you have a penalty to that because you're not charismatic. Chances are of you convincing somebody to part with their worldly belongings not very high.
And again,
but
this is a thing that we've seen in in Fallout. It just says like a statistic that would affect this, and it doesn't show you it doesn't show you the dice being rolled. It doesn't show you what's actually at stake, and it's just I don't know. Midas, what's your thoughts on turn-based stuff in general? Like we've seen a recent sort of pivot where like FF16, the FF7 remake as well has like switched from being, famously turn-based to being much more action-centric.
So I love a turn-based, and I don't know why turn-based gets such a bad time.
Exactly.
When we think of things like everyone loves Pokemon, no one ever says, "Oh my gosh, why is this turn-based game so weird?" And you hear people play things like Persona, people who never played a turn-based game, and their minds blown, and this game's incredible. The thing with turn-based is just it has to be done really well. It's much easier to have a real-time action game where the combat is done well than it is in a turn-based. And when it comes to like modern day turn-based games, with games like Persona and things like Shin Megami Tensei actually showing how sick it can be done really well. I feel like when you add the dice, it just ups the nerd centric. That's all it is. It just ups it up a bit, and it makes you feel a bit more on a nerd level. Because for me, like I say, I play RPGs all the time, and the dice kind of threw me at first. But I'm like, oh, it's the same thing, like you're saying. It's just in front of you rather than being in the background. But when it's done well, it can be great. And I just don't feel like it needs to be in everything. Like Final Fantasy 16 as a real-time combat game worked perfect, and it didn't need to be a turn-based game. But this having turn-based mechanics works well. I don't think everything needs to be one thing.
No, I agree.
No, it is funny though. We've seen, like, I think there's definitely I feel like publishers see real-time combat as being more marketable, and in a lot of ways I think for more casual players it totally is. And it's also, as I think as graphics get better, it's something that it's more fun to showcase.
Yeah,
you know, like Persona, like, is that style goes such a long way. Like if those menus were more sort of static and less stylized, I think, I don't know, a lot more people would write it off as just being, you know, another JRPG. But I think that style really hooked a lot of people who might not have been into that otherwise. Conversely, you know, Yakuza, infamous beat 'em up series, one of the most beat 'em up of beat 'em ups. Like you literally just fight dudes with everything around you, parking cones, bicycles, you name it, all that kind of stuff. Just constantly punching the crap out of people. And they did that for 6 games or 7 and change, whatever. And then they were like, actually, the new one is turn-based. And it works. It totally makes sense. They even contextualize it in the game by making like the main character a huge JRPG nerd. But at the same time, it is sort of a head scratcher that they were like, no, let's do this backwards. Let's flip this. And, you know, we saw like Fallout used to be, you know, very much more akin to something like Baldur's Gate. And then with 3, they were like, no, it's a first person shooter. And I guess the results speak for themselves, because those
have been wildly successful.
Yeah. I love that, Jada. I love that you put Worms Rumble in here. I don't really go to Worms when I think of turn-based combat.
So yeah, I mean, if you remember the old Worms games, they were all turn-based, like playing it Flash on your PC back in the day, like in computer class. It was like, okay, I got to aim my shot, and then I have a limited amount of movement or whatnot to move where I need to go. It's kind of Baldur's Gate. It's kind of how it works, and you use your limited movement to maneuver. You make your attack.
Gate is basically Worms.
Yes, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of worms in
we
Baldur's
put it on
Gate.
the box.
Yes, quoted by Jada Griffin. Yes, but Worms Rumble, their most recent one, I think it's their most recent launch. They swapped to real time, so it's like a real time thing, and it's just kind of a weird, trend. We've seen a lot of like these old classic turn-based go to real time, and so, but it works for some games.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a huge issue with it. I have a weird thing mentally where I feel like turn-based to me, and it really gels with portability. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's partially because, like, if you're playing, you're playing on a Vita or a Switch or whatever, like there's that, I have to go do something else, and you just put it in your pocket. You're not not going to get murdered, Yeah. Like it kind of pauses constantly. Like it's always, balls in your court, but you can just put it away. Yep. And that's, I don't know. That's a stupid mentality. I feel like there's also the aspect of grinding, which is, that's something I appreciate Baldur's Gate for not having. We've become accustomed, thanks to, JRPGs, that there's like a fair amount of grinding. There's random encounters. You have that all the time, but I feel like that's not really an issue here.
There's no level 100 in Baldur's Gate. Most, if you're a tabletop fan, you know this, but most D&D campaigns, the max level generally is level 20. Most campaigns usually end around between 10 and 15 for character levels, depending on what campaign you start. Sometimes you start later, but I won't get into that super nerdy stuff.
Which again, that's one of the things that that video games have kind of like Midas, when you think of like a high level character in a video game, what do you think?
So I know they recently just announced that they're upping the level caps on Final Fantasy 14 MMO to 100, but I just recently finished FF16, and I think the level cap was like 50. I was at when I completed the game, I think I got to 46, and that felt quite like a high. It sounded quite low, but when I was playing it felt high level. I think it's really around the design of the game, and I feel like it's that I hate grinding, and I think grinding is a really bad mechanic that was done in old games where it was just let's just fill some time. I feel like the game should be designed. I know we spoke about Persona a lot, but Persona, the metaverse for me is incredible. That's the way to grind, where it's just part of the story. Where if you want to be super OP, you can do that, or if you just want to kind of be at the level of where the characters are. So yeah, I think that answered your question, Matt.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
definitely.
so-
Like, I mean, again,
And so
when we think of,
before
like, 47 is like a
Yeah.
low level, that you can't do that in D&D. Like that's just
Yeah,
not a thing.
it's not a thing.
It's like completely, yeah.
And before our audience jumps down, if you do when you do start New Game Plus, it ups the cap in 16 to 100, so that gives you a reason to play New Game Plus and stuff. But yeah, it's definitely a lower level cap for the first time through. But yeah, no, I was gonna say. Yeah, it's just very different. Also, I'm on the opposite camp of Midas. I love grinding in video games. I love just chewing through hundreds and hundreds of groups of enemies. I don't know why. It's just the way my brain is wired when it comes to playing games. Probably from all those side-scroll beat-em-ups and just like chewing through bunches and bunches of people hoping for them to drop me stuff. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. But yeah, Baldur's Gate, it's just wild because there's so many different things and you're not going to see everything in your playthrough. It's literally impossible because depending on how you build your character, what class you pick your character, and what party members you choose to take with you, because there's numerous party members and companions you can choose to have along for the ride, you get different options when it comes to dialogue, which will influence whether a certain character wants to join you later, or if you want to kill, if this person's like, no, I don't like this person, I'm going to kill this person. It just changes everything. And then depending on which character you're controlling, that also will change it. So like there is a barn scene, and I will say no more than that.
I keep hearing about this barn. I don't want to know anymore. I'm excited to
But
see
if
the
you
barn.
when you see this barn scene, if you start the dialogue with your barbarian, you get a very different dialogue choice that isn't there.
Your barnbarian?
It's a barnbarian, yes. And it is hilarious.
Okay.
So definitely, and if you don't roll your class as a barbarian when you first start, if you have the party member, Lazelle, she's a barbarian. Or no, she's not a barbarian. She's a fighter. I classed her as a barbarian for me, so it gave me that extra option. There's so much. Sorry, I know your eyes at home are glazing over.
Is
There's
this
so
making
much
you
stuff.
more or less inclined to check out Baldur's Gate?
I can't help it.
Listen.
This game is so deep.
Even as a gamer, I'm confused. I'm like, I felt like I needed to take out a dictionary. I thought I needed to write notes. I was like, Jada, where are you taking me?
I'm taking you
Like,
everywhere.
I have great news.
This
There's a
journey-
player's handbook you can pick up. It's about 200 pages long. It's hardbound. It's like a school textbook. You can find it at your local bookstore in the D&D section.
Honestly, is
Not an easy read.
It's honestly not a bad suggestion, though, if you like to read the player's handbook before getting into Baldur's Gate 3. It's not a terrible idea because it does lay out a bunch of the basic stuff of like what constitutes as being an action, what constitutes as being a bonus action, why do you get one of these each on your turns, what is the difference between a magic spell and a cantrip. They both do magic, but what is the difference between these two?
Cantrip is those spikes that you throw behind the car and people step on it and like a...
Yes,
That's a caltrop.
Those are caltrops. But a cantrip, there is a cantrip called Thorn Whip, which has spikes on a whip.
Take it. All right. Fair enough.
But yes, and so it's like, and the player's handbook breaks down. I'm not telling everybody to go out buy the D&D player's handbook, but if you have access to one, it's not a bad idea to kind of like do a quick overview and read of that. I'm sure there's probably.
I mean, this is a crash course in playing D&D, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to play this game, and then if they ever get around to playing D&D, it's going to be sort of like, oh,
it all makes sense now.
I mean, I had that experience like the first time I played D&D, it was ages ago, is gradually just kind of grokking that. Oh, this is stuff I'm all familiar with from, I mean, even from like Pokemon. Like it's stuff that it's mechanics that have become standard issue in video games have their roots in that, and it's just, I don't know. It's an interesting adjustment. But one of the things about playing D&D, if you're playing with other people who haven't played it, is hearing the DM just have to explain this stuff so much. Just really, that's part of the experience. Just walking people through it. I typically forget half the stuff I learn, so I'm one of those people some of the times. But it sort of comes back to me. But it's, I don't know.
And the beauty of D&D is playing it with a group of people because, like, you know, you play Final Fantasy or Persona or something like that, you're fully in control of everything that happens at that point for the most part. When you play with a group, Baldur's Gate does 4-player co-op, while you're maybe talking to somebody may go pull a switch somewhere in your game and trigger something else, and things just start happening while you're talking to somebody else. And that's D&D in a nutshell. It can just get very chaotic, very quick, and it's very enjoyable because the world is it's ready to adapt to whatever you do. And like, I think that's the biggest thing for Baldur's Gate for me, is that no matter what I can come up with, the game is pretty much ready for it. And there's just so many things that are just prepared for it. And that's what I love about RPGs, is there's just so much depth. There's so many levels and everywhere to go with it.
Emphasis on actual role playing. Like you're not just there to save the world and like fight a bunch of goblins and then kill God or whatever and reach level 100. Like ride an airship with Sid. Like you're there to
experience the story.
Whoever the hell you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something to look forward to.